The emergency session hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 43 species filled the circular chamber, their various forms shifting in seats designed to accommodate everything from gaseous luminari to the massive stone-like Krodan. At the center platform stood War Master Catharn of the Vraxis Dominion, his forearms crossed over his armored chest, mandibles clicking with barely contained aggression. Ambassador Chen Wei sat in the human delegation area, a small section near the back. The seat next to him was empty. Earth only sent 2 representatives to most council sessions. They were a minor power after all, 23 years since first contact, and humanity still controlled just 7 star systems. Nothing compared to the Zenthari's 200 systems, or the Vraxis Dominion's iron grip on 70 conquered worlds. The council must decide. Catharn's voice boomed through the translation devices everyone wore. Surrender the 3 contested systems to the Dominion, or face total war. We have developed new weapons. Your combined fleet will burn. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The overly strategic commander stood, her blue skin pale with worry. The contested systems contain 12 billion inhabitants. We cannot simply abandon them. Then you choose war, Catharn said simply. Chen watched the debate unfold with calm eyes. He had seen this coming for months. The Vraxis had been growing bolder, testing boundaries, probing defenses. They were predators, and they had finally decided the council looked weak enough to challenge. The Zenthari chief constructor activated his speaking platform. Our shipyards can produce additional vessels, but it will take time. The Vraxis fleet currently outnumbers our combined forces. Cowards, Catharn spat. You hide behind your factories and your trade routes. The Dominion takes what it wants. Several smaller species began arguing for surrender. Better to lose 3 systems than risk total war. Chen noticed how Catharn's eyes gleamed at their fear. The War Master was enjoying this. Then Catharn's gaze fell on the human section. A cruel smile spread across his face. Perhaps we should test the Council's resolve on a smaller scale first, Catharn said, his tone almost casual. Humanity controls 2 systems bordering Dominion space. We claim them as buffer zones. Surely the Council will not risk war over the humans and their modest fleet. The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to Chen. The ambassador stood slowly, smoothing his gray suit. He was 57 years old, with silver hair and the calm demeanor of someone who had spent decades in difficult negotiations. He walked to the speaking platform without hurry. The answer is no, Chen said simply. Catharn's laughter was harsh, clicking and scraping. The humans refuse? You have 40 ships. We have catalogued your entire fleet. Destroyers and frigates outdated by galactic standards. You are irrelevant. You have catalogued what we allowed you to see, Chen replied, his voice level. I strongly advise the Dominion to reconsider. Humanity offers neutrality in your dispute with the Council. Decline this offer at your own peril. Confusion swept the chamber. What was Chen talking about? The human fleet was public knowledge. Every species maintained intelligence on their neighbors. The 40 human ships were all that existed. Everyone knew this. Catharn leaned forward, his massive frame towering over the human. Is this a bluff? Does the prey think it can frighten the predator with empty words? It is not a bluff, Chen said. It is a warning. One I hope you will heed. The War Master's laughter grew louder. Then humanity has chosen extinction, how sad. How utterly predictable. He turned to address the full council. Let this be a lesson. The Dominion will crush the human systems within 1 week. Then we will return to discuss the Council's surrender of the contested territories. Watch what happens to those who defy us. Catharn and his delegation left the chamber. The moment the doors sealed behind them, chaos erupted. Representatives shouted questions at Chen. What did he mean? What had humanity hidden? Was he insane? Chen raised his hand for silence. When the chamber finally quieted, he spoke clearly. Humanity has been part of this council for 23 years. In that time, we have traded honestly, shared what we could, and made friends among the stars. But we have also remembered the lessons of our own history. He paused, looking around the chamber. Hope for peace. Prepare for the worst. What does that mean? The Zenthari constructor demanded. What have you prepared? You will see, Chen said quietly. When the Vraxis attack our systems, you will understand. I only regret that it has come to this. He left the chamber before anyone could question him further. Behind him, representatives argued and speculated. Some thought the humans had developed new weapons. Others believed Chen was bluffing, buying time. A few wondered if humanity had formed secret alliances. None guessed the truth. Chen returned to his quarters and activated his secure communication device. The encryption was quantum level, impossible to intercept or decode. He typed a simple message, protocol revelation. Authorization, Omega Black. The message traveled faster than light, bouncing through relay stations until it reached the Sol system. There, far beyond Neptune's orbit, in the darkness of the Oort cloud, something received the signal. Deep in a command center buried within a structure of impossible size, alarms began to sound. Crew members who had lived their entire lives in that structure moved to their stations with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this moment since birth. Admiral Kira Okonkwo sat in the commander's chair, her dark eyes reflecting the glow of 1,000 displays. She was 42 years old and had never set foot on Earth. Neither had her parents. The structure was her world, her home, her responsibility. Confirmation received, her communications officer reported. Protocol revelation is active. Begin wake-up sequence, Okonkwo ordered. All systems to full power. Prepare the fleet for deployment. Around her, the bridge came alive. Lights brightened. Displays flashed with data. And throughout the massive structure, systems that had been dormant or running at minimal power began to wake. The UNS Indomitable was going to war. The year was 2156 and humanity had just achieved faster-than-light travel. The breakthrough changed everything. Suddenly, the stars were within reach. Within a decade, human ships had explored 50 neighboring star systems. Within 2 more decades, they had established colonies on 6 worlds. Then came the discovery that changed human history forever. In 2187, a deep space probe detected an artificial structure orbiting a dead star 12 light-years from Earth. It was an automated mining station, abandoned for thousands of years. The builders were long gone, but the message was clear. Humanity was not alone in the universe. The world governments held emergency meetings. Some wanted to celebrate. Others urged caution. But one group, made up of military leaders and strategic thinkers, asked a different question. What if the beings who built that station came back? What if they were hostile? Project Bulwark was born in secret in 2156. The public never knew. Even most government officials were kept in the dark. Only a few hundred people initially knew the truth. Humanity was going to build something that could ensure their survival. No matter what they found in the stars, they chose the Oort cloud as their construction site. Far beyond Neptune, where no casual observer would ever look, automated factories were built first, powered by fusion reactors and fed by the ice and minerals of countless comets and asteroids. These factories built more factories, which built more, until a vast industrial complex existed in the darkness of deep space. Then they started building the Supercarrier. It took decades. The structure grew slowly, assembled by millions of robots working in the cold and silence. It was designed to be completely self-sufficient. Agricultural domes to grow food, recycling systems to reclaim every drop of water, manufacturing facilities to build everything from clothes to starships, power generators using technologies that pushed the boundaries of physics and weapons that made Earth's regular military fleet look like toys. When humanity made first contact with the Galactic Council in 2324, Project Bulwark had been building for 168 years. The UNS Indomitable was 70% complete. The second supercarrier had just begun construction. The humans who met the aliens were friendly, eager to trade and learn. They shared their culture, their art, their history. They built embassies and signed treaties. And they carefully hid the fact that they were preparing for the possibility that peaceful coexistence might fail. Now, in 2347, that preparation was about to be tested. The Vraxis Dominion attacked without warning. Their fleet of 8,000 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of human space, weapons already charging. The human outer defense perimeter consisted of 20 ships stationed across 3 systems. The battle lasted 40 minutes. Galactic news networks broadcast the slaughter across Council space. Species watched in horror as human ships fought desperately against impossible odds. The human captains were brave, using clever tactics and fighting to the last. But bravery meant nothing against such overwhelming force. This is the fate of those who defy the Dominion, Catharn announced to the galaxy. The humans will serve as an example. The Vraxis fleet advanced deeper into human territory. They expected the remaining 20 ships to mount some kind of defense. Instead, they found the ships retreating toward Earth, moving in a coordinated pattern that seemed more like a migration than a military maneuver. They flee like prey animals, Catharn's second-in-command observed. "Let them run," Catharn replied. "We will catch them at their homeworld and finish this." The Vraxis fleet pursued, confident in their victory. Behind them, they left 3 human colony worlds under occupation. The colonists were terrified but alive. The Vraxis wanted prisoners, proof of their conquest. In the Galactic Council chamber, representatives watched the invasion with growing dread. Some had protested the attack on humanity, but no one had actually intervened. The Vraxis were too powerful and the Council fleet was still mobilizing. "The humans are finished," the Zenthari constructor said quietly. 20 ships cannot stop 8,000. Perhaps Chen was bluffing after all, an Overlian strategist suggested, trying to buy time that did not exist. They had no idea how wrong they were. At the edge of the Sol system, alarms began sounding on every ship's sensor array. Something was approaching, something massive. At first, the sensors registered it as an asteroid, a very large asteroid. Then the size estimates began climbing. Moon-sized, larger. The sensors recalibrated again and again, trying to make sense of what they were detecting. Then it appeared. The UNS Indomitable translated into normal space like a mountain materializing from nothing. It was 847 kilometers long, shaped like a massive wedge with a flat top covered in what looked like city blocks. The sides were studded with weapons ports, hangar bays, and sensor arrays. Power readings made nearby ship's sensors scream warnings about impossible energy levels. The human defense fleet, which had been retreating, suddenly stopped. They took up positions around Earth, waiting. The Vraxis fleet halted their advance, confusion spreading through their ranks. Officers shouted questions. Sensors operators rechecked their readings. This could not be real. Nothing this large could move faster than light. The power requirements alone would drain a star. Catharn stared at his displays, his mandibles frozen mid-click. "What is that?" he whispered. His communications officer's voice shook. "It is broadcasting human identification codes. It is a ship. A human ship." "Impossible," Catharn said. But even as he spoke, he watched his sensors track the massive vessel. It was not attacking. It was simply existing, hanging in space like a sleeping giant. Then the hangar bays began to open. There were hundreds of hangar bays, each one the size of a terrestrial city. And from each bay, small craft began to emerge, fighters by the look of them, each about the size of a Vraxis patrol ship. 10 fighters, 100, 1,000, 10,000. The sensors struggled to maintain count as the swarm kept growing. 50,000, 100,000. Still they came, pouring from the supercarrier like insects from a disturbed nest. "How many fighters does that thing carry?" someone on Catharn's bridge asked. No one had an answer. Throughout the Vraxis fleet, panic began to spread. Officers demanded orders. Ship captains asked whether to advance or retreat. And Catharn, the feared war master who had conquered 17 species, could only stare at the impossible ship and the swarm of fighters that blotted out the stars. A message came through on all frequencies. A human woman's voice, calm and clear. "This is Admiral Kira Okonkwo of the UNS Indomitable. You were warned. You chose violence. Witness the consequence." The fighter swarm began to move, forming up into precise formations, and behind them, larger shapes began emerging from the supercarrier's bays. Destroyers, cruisers, capital ships that made the Vraxis battleships look small. Catharn finally found his voice. "All ships battle formation. Target that carrier. We will destroy it." But even as he gave the order, he felt something he had not experienced in decades of warfare. Something he had made countless other species feel but had never known himself. Fear. The Vraxis Dominion had conquered 17 species using the same basic strategy. Overwhelming force applied with brutal efficiency. Their fleet would form into a hammer formation. A massive wedge of ships that would punch through any defense and crush resistance through sheer numbers. Catharn ordered his 8,000 ships into that familiar formation. They had never failed him before. One ship, no matter how large, could not stand against them all. The physics were simple. The Dominion had more guns, more missiles, more plasma cascade weapons. The human carrier would be destroyed. "Target the center mass of that vessel," Catharn commanded. "All ships fire on my mark." But before he could give the order to fire, the human fighter swarm moved. They did not charge forward like normal fighters. Instead, they split into dozens of groups, each group moving with perfect coordination. Within seconds, they had surrounded the Vraxis fleet on all sides. Above, below, flanking left and right, the Vraxis ships suddenly found themselves inside a sphere of human fighters. "Sir, they are not attacking," Catharn's tactical officer reported. "They are just holding position." Catharn felt his confidence waver. This was not normal fighter behavior. Why surround the fleet and then wait? "Fire," he ordered. "All weapons, fire at will." The Vraxis fleet opened up with everything they had. Energy weapons, missiles, plasma charges. The space between the two forces filled with deadly fire. Surely nothing could survive such an attack. The human fighters moved. They did not scatter in panic. They did not take random evasive action. They moved like a single organism. Every fighter shifting position in perfect timing with every other fighter. The Vraxis weapons fire passed through empty space where fighters had been milliseconds before. The human return fire was surgical. Each fighter seemed to know exactly where to aim, exactly when to fire. Vraxis ships began reporting damage. Shields failing, weapon systems offline, engines damaged. But very few ships were destroyed. The humans were not trying to kill. They were disabling. "How are they doing this?" Catharn demanded. "How are they anticipating our every move?" His science officer had an answer, and it terrified him. "Sir, I believe their fighters are not individually piloted. They are being controlled by a central intelligence, an artificial mind of some kind. It is calculating our firing solutions before we execute them, and moving the fighters accordingly." Catharn's blood ran cold. Artificial intelligence was banned by Galactic Council law. The AI wars 3,000 years ago had nearly destroyed multiple species. But if the humans had been working in secret for centuries outside Council oversight, they might have developed AI that was stable, controllable, and devastatingly effective. "Target the carrier," Catharn ordered. "If we destroy it, the AI controlling the fighters may fail." 2,000 Vraxis ships turned their weapons toward the Indomitable and fired. The amount of energy released would have vaporized a small planet. The Supercarrier's shields absorbed it all. A barrier of invisible force surrounded the massive ship, and the Vraxis weapons fire splashed against it like water against stone. The shields did not even flicker. They held steady, as if the attack had been nothing more than a gentle rain. "Shield strength?" Catharn asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Unknown, sir. Our sensors cannot even measure it. The technology is beyond our understanding." Then the Indomitable began deploying its larger ships. The destroyers came first. 2,000 of them, each one 3 times the size of a Vraxis battleship. They moved into formation around the carrier with the same precision as the fighters. Their weapons powered up, and the Vraxis sensors registered energy signatures that made no sense. What kind of power generation could create such readings? Next came the cruisers. 800 heavy cruisers that made the destroyers look small. Their hulls were smooth, covered in what looked like scale-like armor that shifted and adjusted as the ships moved. Then the battleships. Then the dreadnoughts, each class larger than the last, each one carrying weapons that existed beyond the Vraxis understanding of physics. The Vraxis Dominion fleet, which had seemed so powerful just hours ago, suddenly looked small, outnumbered, outgunned. Catharn made a decision. "All ships concentrate fire on their destroyers. We outnumber them 4-1. We can still win this," the Vraxis fleet tried. They focused their fire, attempting to overwhelm individual human ships through numerical superiority. It should have worked. But the human ships moved with the same coordinated intelligence as the fighters. They shifted positions, rotated damaged shields away from fire, supported each other with overlapping defensive fields. And when the human ships returned fire, the Vraxis fleet began to die. The human weapons were terrifyingly efficient. Energy beams that cut through Vraxis shields like they were not there. Missiles that dodged point defense fire with impossible agility. And something else. Something that made Vraxis captains cry out in fear. Weapons that seemed to fold space itself, crushing ships from the inside out. Within 1 hour, the Vraxis fleet had lost 1,000 ships. Within 2 hours, 3,000, Catharn watched his fleet being systematically dismantled. Every tactic failed. Every strategy was countered before it could be executed. It was like fighting an opponent who could see the future. "War Master, we must retreat," his second-in-command urged. "We are being slaughtered." Catharn's pride warred with his survival instinct. To retreat was to admit defeat. To admit that the Vraxis Dominion could be beaten. But to stay was to die. He was about to give the order to withdraw when something struck his flagship. Not a weapon. A breaching pod. Then another. And another. "We are being boarded," someone shouted. Catharn grabbed his plasma rifle and ran toward the breach points. If he was going to die, he would die fighting. He reached the first breach to find his elite guards already engaged in combat. The human boarding troops wore powered armor that looked almost organic, covered in the same scale-like material as the ships. They moved with frightening speed and coordination, their weapons firing with perfect accuracy. Catharn raised his rifle and fired. The plasma bolt hit a human soldier square in the chest. The armor absorbed it without damage. The soldier turned to look at Catharn, and through the helmet visor he could see human eyes. Calm. Focused. Utterly without fear. The soldier raised what looked like a simple rifle and fired. Something hit Catharn and his entire body went numb. He collapsed, unable to move but fully conscious. Around him, his guards were falling to the same weapons. Stunned, not killed. The humans were taking prisoners. Within minutes, Catharn's flagship was under human control. The same scene played out on dozens of other Vraxis command ships. The boarding teams moved with military precision that made Vraxis elite forces look like untrained civilians. Admiral Okonkwo's voice came through on all frequencies again. "Vraxis fleet, this is your final warning. Power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted to neutral space. Any ship that attempts to flee will be disabled. Any ship that continues to fight will be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to comply." The remaining Vraxis ships, leaderless and terrified, began powering down their weapons. Throughout Council space, representatives watched the battle footage in stunned silence. The humans had not just won. They had dominated. A fleet of 8,000 ships had been defeated in 6 hours by forces launched from a single vessel. The Zenthari chief constructor sat at his workstation, running calculations over and over. "The power requirements," he muttered. "The materials science. The manufacturing capacity. How did they hide this? How long have they been building?" An Overlean strategist watched the battle replays, studying the human tactics. "They did not fight like any species I have studied. Every move was coordinated. Every action served a purpose. It was like watching a single organism with thousands of bodies." In the Galactic Council chamber, Ambassador Chen stood at the speaking platform. Every representative waited for him to speak. The chamber was silent for the first time in its history. Chen looked around at the assembled species. Some looked afraid, others looked angry. A few looked awed. "Humanity did not build one supercarrier," Chen said quietly. "We built 4. On sensor displays throughout Council space, 3 more massive signatures appeared. One emerged from the Kuiper Belt, another from deep space near Neptune, the third from a position beyond Pluto. Each one was the same impossible size as the Indomitable. The Indomitable was simply the closest to the conflict," Chen continued. "The others remain on station, protecting human space. This is what we have been building for the last 191 years. This is what we tried to warn the Vraxis about. This is why we asked them to reconsider." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We did not want this. We hoped we would never need to reveal these ships. But the Vraxis chose violence and we responded. We will always respond. Humanity will not be conquered. We will not be enslaved. We will not go quietly into extinction." The chamber remained silent. No one knew what to say. Everything they thought they knew about humanity had been wrong. The Galactic Council chamber had seen many historic moments in its 3,000-year history. But nothing compared to the chaos that erupted after Ambassador Chen's revelation. Representatives from 43 species all tried to speak at once. Some demanded explanations. Others made accusations. A few simply sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had witnessed. The Zenthari chief constructor was the first to gain recognition to speak. His voice carried a mix of awe and frustration. "For 200 years you have been building these vessels. For 23 years you have been members of this council. You attended our engineering symposiums. You toured our shipyards. You asked questions about our construction techniques, all while hiding something that makes our greatest achievements look primitive. Chen remained calm at the speaking platform. We learned much from you. Your expertise helped us solve problems we might have struggled with for decades. We are grateful for that knowledge. You used us, a Luminary representative said, their energy form flickering with anger. You pretended to be students while you were already masters. We were students, Chen corrected. And we still are. Your technology is remarkable in many ways. Your energy generation, your faster-than-light drives, your medical sciences. We have learned from all of you. What we built in secret was not better than your work. It was simply different, designed for a different purpose, an Overlion strategist stood. And what purpose is that? Conquest? Intimidation? You have 4 ships that each carry more firepower than some species' entire fleets. What are we supposed to think? Chen took a breath before answering. You are supposed to think that humanity takes its survival seriously. Let me tell you a story about Earth's history. 400 years ago, our world was divided into hundreds of nations. We fought each other constantly. Wars that killed millions, weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We came very close to extinction several times, and it was always because someone chose violence when diplomacy was possible. He paused, looking around the chamber. We learned from those mistakes. When we reached the stars and found evidence of other civilizations, we made a choice. We would seek peace with anyone we met. We would trade, share, learn. But we would also ensure that if peace failed, we could protect ourselves. The supercarriers are not weapons of conquest. They are insurance policies. Insurance against what? The Zenthari constructor asked. Against extinction, Chen replied. Every species in this council has dozens or hundreds of worlds. If one falls, you continue. But humanity has 7 systems. If Earth were destroyed, we would lose our homeworld, our history, our culture. The supercarriers ensure that even if the worst happens, humanity will survive. Each one is a complete civilization. 2.3 million people live on the Indomitable alone. It has agricultural domes, schools, hospitals, manufacturing facilities. If Earth fell tomorrow, those 2.3 million humans could sustain themselves indefinitely and rebuild our species. The chamber fell quiet as representatives absorbed this. It was a level of preparation that bordered on paranoia, but given what they had just witnessed, it was also undeniably effective. A small species from the outer rim, the Queenal, spoke up. Their representative was barely a meter tall, with multiple eyes and soft fur. For species like mine, with limited resources and only 3 colony worlds, what you describe sounds less like a threat and more like hope. If our world were threatened, we would have nowhere to go. But you thought ahead. You prepared. Perhaps we have been looking at this wrong. Not everyone agreed. Several larger, more militaristic species saw the human supercarriers as a direct threat to the power balance. Over the next days, as the council continued its sessions, a clear divide emerged. Some species wanted to form closer ties with humanity. Others wanted restrictions placed on human military development. Meanwhile, the Vraxis Dominion was collapsing. Warmaster Catharn's defeat had shattered the aura of invincibility that held their empire together. Conquered species began rebelling. The Dominion's own government fractured into competing factions. Catharn himself was executed by his own people, blamed for the disaster. The Dominion's acting leader came before the council to sue for peace. They offered massive reparations to humanity. Territory, resources, technology, whatever it would take to avoid complete destruction. Ambassador, Chen surprised everyone with his response. Humanity wants no territory from the Vraxis Dominion. We want no reparations. We want only one thing, peace. Not just with us, but with all species. The 17 worlds you conquered must be granted independence. The Dominion will cease all expansion and respect the sovereignty of your neighbors. If you agree to these terms, humanity will consider the matter settled. The Vraxis representative was stunned. You ask for nothing for yourselves? After we attacked you? We ask for a better galaxy, Chen replied. One where conflicts are resolved through dialogue instead of warfare. We demonstrated our military power because we had no choice. But that is not the future we want. The Council voted to accept the peace terms. The 17 formerly conquered species were granted independence and offered Council membership. It was a historic moment, and it changed the Council's nature. For the first time in centuries, it had enforced justice against a major power. But not everyone was happy with the new order. In a secret meeting far from the council chamber, representatives from 5 species gathered. They called themselves the Hierarchs, and they represented civilizations that had thrived on the old power structure. The uncertainty had been useful to them. Conflicts between major powers created opportunities for profit and political maneuvering. Humanity has upset the balance, their leader, a Croton general, said. His rock-like body rumbled with each word. Today they enforce peace. Tomorrow they could enforce anything they want. Who could stop them? They could rule the galaxy if they chose, a reptilian Sarkesh added. 4 supercarriers, unknown additional technologies. And they are clever. They present themselves as peacekeepers, which makes opposition to them seem unreasonable. Then we must act before they consolidate power, the Croton decided. We need to destroy Earth and the supercarriers simultaneously. If we use overwhelming force before they can react, we can eliminate the threat. They called it Operation Sunfall. Intelligence operatives would infiltrate human systems, gathering targeting data. Meanwhile, the Hierarchs would quietly assemble a fleet from their combined forces, 20,000 ships hidden in the dark spaces between stars. When everything was ready, they would strike without warning. It was a good plan. It might have even worked. But humanity's intelligence services had been refined over centuries of spying on themselves. Human nations had spent hundreds of years trying to steal each other's secrets, developing ever more sophisticated methods of espionage and counter-espionage. When those same techniques were applied to alien civilizations that had never needed such paranoia, the results were startlingly effective. Human intelligence detected the conspiracy within 2 weeks of its formation. Ambassador Chen received the report in his quarters. He read it 3 times, feeling a cold anger build in his chest. After everything humanity had done to avoid escalation, after offering peace instead of revenge, these species were planning to destroy Earth. He could have ordered a military response. The Indomitable could have eliminated the Hierarchs' hidden fleet before they even knew they had been discovered. It would have been efficient, clean, and completely within humanity's capabilities. Instead, Chen did something the conspirators never anticipated. He made it public. At the next council session, Chen presented all the evidence: intercepted communications, fleet movement data, intelligence reports, everything laid out for the entire council to see. We could have eliminated this threat quietly, Chen said, his voice hard. We could have destroyed the Hierarchs' fleet and their homeworlds before they knew we were coming. We have that capability, but that is not the precedent we want to set. He looked directly at the 5 species representatives. They sat frozen, their conspiracy exposed for all to see. You thought us weak when we first joined this council? Then you thought us terrifying when we revealed our military power. We are neither. We are simply survivors who refuse to die quietly. And we believe that the law should apply equally to all species, including ourselves. The council erupted in debate. The Hierarchs tried to defend themselves, claiming they had only been preparing defensive measures, but the evidence was overwhelming. They had been planning an unprovoked attack on a council member. The vote was nearly unanimous. The Hierarchs' governments were censured. Economic sanctions were imposed. And in 3 of the 5 species, the exposure of the conspiracy led to political revolutions that replaced the old governments with reformist factions. After the session ended, Admiral Okonkwo contacted Chen through secure channels. Her image appeared on his communication screen, her expression grave. The council is asking more questions, she said, about our technology, our capabilities. Some of the scientists are getting suspicious. They are starting to wonder what else we might be hiding. Chen nodded slowly. I know. I have been fielding requests for technical exchanges, for tours of the supercarriers, for detailed specifications. Everyone wants to know our secrets. Should we tell them about Project Nexus? Okonkwo asked. Chen was silent for a long moment. Project Nexus was humanity's other secret, one that made the supercarriers look small by comparison. Not yet, he finally said. The supercarriers were enough of a shock. If we tell them about the extragalactic colonies now, it might push some species over the edge. They will find out eventually, Okonkwo pointed out. I know, Chen agreed. But by then, perhaps they will trust us enough to understand why we did it. On Earth's moon, in a facility buried beneath kilometers of rock, scientists monitored readings from an experimental reactor. The device was small, barely 3 meters across, but the energy readings it produced were astronomical. At its center, space itself was twisted, folded, creating a stable wormhole. On the other side of that wormhole, 2.7 million light-years away in the Triangulum galaxy, human colonies were thriving. 63 worlds settled over the last decade, each one growing humanity's presence outside their home galaxy. It was another insurance policy, another way to ensure that humanity could not be wiped out, and for now it remained humanity's secret. 6 months passed after the revelation of the Supercarriers and the exposure of the Hierarch's conspiracy. The Galactic Council had transformed in that time, becoming something closer to what its founders had originally envisioned. A place where disputes were settled through dialogue and law, rather than through military might and intimidation. Humanity found itself in an unexpected position. They had become leaders not through conquest or threat, but through the respect earned by restraint. They could have devastated the Vraxis dominion, but chose measured response instead. They could have silently destroyed the Hierarchs, but chose public justice instead. These choices mattered. Ambassador Chen walked through the Council Station's public gardens, a space where representatives from dozens of species could meet informally. A Quinal scientist approached him, her small form barely reaching his waist. "Ambassador, I wanted to thank you," she said, her multiple eyes blinking in sequence. "My government has begun planning our own survival measures inspired by your example. Not supercarriers, we lack the resources, but generation ships capable of sustaining our population if our worlds are threatened. You showed us that preparation is not the same as aggression," Chen smiled. "I am glad we could help. If you need any assistance with the technical challenges, please let us know." Similar conversations were happening throughout Council space. Humanity had begun sharing select technologies with allied species, always carefully staying one generation behind their cutting-edge developments. They helped the Zinthari understand new hull-strengthening techniques. They assisted the Luminari with shield harmonics. They taught the Overleans about coordinated fleet tactics, but the core secrets remained locked away. The gravity drives that let the supercarriers move faster than light despite their size, the quantum manufacturing that could produce complex machines atom by atom, the stable artificial intelligence that coordinated fleet movements with perfect precision. These technologies stayed human. On the indomitable Admiral Okonkwo stood in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Her second-in-command, Commander Park, joined her. "The Council is requesting another tour of the ship," Park said. "The Zenthari constructor wants to study our manufacturing facilities. The Luminari want to examine our power generation. Everyone wants to understand how we built this. Tell them we will consider the request," Okonkwo replied. "Which means no, but politely." Park smiled. "They are getting frustrated. Some species think we are being secretive for no reason." "We are being secretive for a very good reason," Okonkwo said. "The supercarriers were designed to ensure human survival. If everyone knows exactly how they work, someone will eventually figure out how to defeat them, and then they stop being insurance policies." She was right, of course. Sharing too much would eventually undermine the very security the supercarriers provided. It was a careful balance. In the council chamber, humanity continued its work as mediators. When disputes arose between species, Chen and his team would offer solutions that considered everyone's interests. When smaller species faced intimidation from larger neighbors, humanity would quietly let it be known that such behavior was unacceptable. The galaxy was slowly becoming a safer place. But not everyone had given up on the old ways. Some of the hierarchs, those who had lost power when their conspiracy was exposed, began meeting in secret again. They were more careful this time. No communications that could be intercepted. No large fleet movements, just quiet conversations and subtle planning. They recruited from species that felt threatened by humanity's rise. From military leaders who had lost influence in the new peaceful order, from traders who had profited from conflicts and now saw their income declining. Their new plan was more sophisticated. Instead of attacking humanity directly, they would undermine human credibility, create situations where humanity's responses looked aggressive or unreasonable, plant evidence of human spying, start rumors about secret weapons, slowly turn the Council against Earth through 1,000 small cuts. It might have worked against a less careful opponent. But humanity had not survived centuries of internal conflicts without learning how to recognize manipulation. Human intelligence services tracked the conspiracy's growth, identified every member, mapped every connection. This time, they did not wait to present evidence to the council. Ambassador Chen requested a private meeting with the leaders of the 5 species involved. When they arrived, expecting perhaps a negotiation or a warning, they found themselves facing not just Chen, but representatives from a dozen other species who had also detected the conspiracy. "We wanted to give you an opportunity to stop this yourselves," Chen said quietly, "before it becomes public and destroys what little credibility your governments have left." The conspirators looked around at the gathered representatives.
The Quinal scientist was there.
Several smaller species that had benefited from the new order, even a Xanthari official who had been monitoring the conspiracy independently. "You cannot prove anything," one of the hierarchs said, but his voice lacked confidence. Chen placed a data chip on the table. "Recordings of your meetings. Financial records showing payments to intelligence operatives. Communications between your assets in various governments. We have everything. The question is whether this becomes a council matter, or whether you choose to end this quietly." The conspirators realized they had no choice. If this became public, their governments would fall completely. Better to accept defeat and maintain some dignity. Over the following weeks, the conspiracy dissolved. Members were quietly removed from positions of influence. The species involved implemented internal reforms, and the council never officially knew how close they had come to another destabilizing conflict. Admiral Okonkwo met with Chen after the matter was resolved. They sat in Chen's office, a simple space with a window showing Earth in the distance. "We cannot keep doing this," Okonkwo said. "Every time we solve one conspiracy, another forms. There will always be someone who wants to return to the old ways." "I know," Chen agreed, "which is why I think it is time." "Time for what?" "To tell them about Project Nexus." Okonkwo was quiet for a long moment. "Are you sure?" "That secret has held for 10 years. And it will eventually be discovered," Chen said. "Better that we control how and when. Better that we explain our reasoning rather than have them think we were hiding something sinister." The next council session began normally. Routine business, minor disputes, trade agreements. Then Chen requested special speaking time. When he stood at the platform, every representative gave him their attention. When humanity's ambassador requested special time, it usually meant something significant. "Members of the council," Chen began, "humanity has another revelation to share. 10 years ago we completed Project Nexus, a stable wormhole generator that allows instantaneous travel between galaxies." The chamber erupted. Questions flew from every direction. Chen waited for silence. "We have established 63 colony worlds in the Triangulum Galaxy," he continued. 2.7 million light-years from here. These colonies are thriving. They represent another insurance policy, another way to ensure that humanity cannot be eliminated. A Xanthari representative stood. "You have been colonizing another galaxy while participating in this council? While we debated territory in this galaxy, you had already expanded beyond it?" "Yes," Chen said simply. "We do not claim those worlds on any council registry, because they are outside council space entirely. They represent no threat to any species here. But they do represent our commitment to survival." The Overlean strategist who had once criticized humanity now spoke with something like respect. "You do not think small, do you? Most species plan for the next century. You plan for the next million years. We plan for survival," Chen corrected, "however long that requires." Over the following months, the revelation of Project Nexus changed the council again. Some species were frightened by humanity's capabilities. Others were inspired. Several smaller species approached Chen about the possibility of establishing their own extragalactic colonies, asking for human help with the technology. Humanity shared the wormhole technology with 3 species, carefully selected for their peaceful nature and their genuine need for additional living space. It was a gesture that said humanity was not hoarding knowledge for selfish reasons. 10 years after the revelation of the supercarriers, Admiral Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as it patrolled the border regions of council space. A young officer approached her, a woman who had been born on the ship just as Okonkwo had been. "Admiral, do you think the council will ever truly trust us?" the officer asked. Okonkwo considered the question carefully. "Trust, perhaps not completely, but they respect us. They know we could dominate them if we wished, but we choose not to. They know we prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. That respect is worth more than trust." She looked out at the stars, thinking about the long journey humanity had taken. From a single planet to 7 systems to colonies in another galaxy. From a species that nearly destroyed itself to one that worked to protect others. The supercarriers were built so we would never need to use them in anger, Okonkwo said quietly. We succeeded. We showed our strength and then chose peace. Now comes the harder part. Proving every day that we are not the monsters we could be. The officer nodded, understanding. That is why we patrol instead of conquer. Exactly, Okonkwo agreed. In the darkness of space far beyond the galaxy, construction continued on a 5th supercarrier. This one was even larger than the others, incorporating technologies that pushed the boundaries of physics even further. Its name was still classified. Its purpose was the same as the others, ensuring humanity's survival. Because humanity had learned the most important lesson of all. Hope for peace but prepare for the worst. Be strong enough that no one dares attack you but wise enough not to attack others. Build weapons so terrible you never need to use them. And always have a backup plan. The galaxy was safer than it had been in centuries. Species cooperated more and fought less. Trade flourished. Science advanced. And humanity, the species that had once been dismissed as irrelevant, had become the guardians of that peace. Not through conquest, not through intimidation, but through the simple demonstration that they had the power to destroy, but the wisdom to protect instead. The UNS Indomitable continued its patrol, a mountain of metal and hope moving silently through the stars. Inside, millions of humans lived their lives, worked their jobs, raised their children. They were the insurance policy, the last survivors if the worst happened, the seed from which humanity could be reborn. But they hoped, as they had always hoped, that they would never be needed for that purpose, that Earth would endure, that humanity's home would remain safe, and that the supercarriers would continue their patrol, not as weapons of war but as symbols of the peace they had fought so hard to achieve. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity could be peaceful. Humanity could be generous. Humanity could be trusted. But humanity could also be terrifying when threatened. And that combination of traits made them the perfect peacekeepers for a galaxy that had spent too long at war. The story of Earth's hidden supercarriers had ended. But the story of humanity's role in the galaxy had just begun.